how this founder that was stuck at 30K per month actually was able to eventually scale past the 100K mark and also eventually the 200K mark on the offer using the same type of offering, the same type of quality of leads, just with the optimization of their systems using the ACQ compounder system. When it comes to that, to run you through it, it all started for this company with the founder at their starting point. Their starting point was that 30K a month mark. When it came to that 30K a month mark, it's something that they had been stuck at for at least 3 months in a row. They tried to go past it, they pushed it to 35 one time, but then they fell back to 30, eventually also a little bit underneath it. They didn't know why. The quality of leads was decently okay. The service was absolutely amazing, but still they weren't able to actually scale past it. When I joined this company, I saw how badly they were struggling. The founder was working just in the sales aspect already 40 hours a week, but then besides that also had to do the marketing, had to do the client delivery, had to do everything. So the founder was blown up with hours, but on top of that, there was just nothing in place. Everything was just being eyeballed. We needed to fix this. So when I joined the team, the first thing that we started looking at was automating their whole lead quality system. What I mean by that is when that automation came in, it came down to making sure that people actually got reminders that they were actually going to show up. That came down to having 3 different channels on this specific offering. That was messages, WhatsApp, and email. The reason that we also use WhatsApp on this one was because it was a global company. So they also had clients from different sides of the world. So we couldn't just do text and email only. So we also went to WhatsApp. On WhatsApp with this one, we eventually started sending them a couple of things. One of the things was having that founder introduction. Because the founder was so heavily in this company, a big thing was making sure that the people who were actually going to be working with us were 100% bought in on who the founder actually was. When we started implementing just the founder introduction, the qualification, but also the show up already jumped from being at 50% to being at 60%. It's still not where we wanted it to be, but it was already a 10% increase of show up rate just by giving them a founder introduction. On top of that, we really made sure that they were also going to see testimonials of other people that had worked with our company, and that just got them even more bought in. So everyone that actually joined our meetings were going to be more so qualified. They were actually going to be bought in and they wanted to actually be a part of the thing that we were selling. When we had these 3 things in place, like I mentioned, just the founder introduction only already increased the show up rate by 10%, but everything combined increased the show up rate to 75%, and the qualification rate went from being at around 45.5% to being at around 75 as well. A super big jump in just the show up and the qualification rate just by implementing these systems. When we implemented those systems, of course, there were going to be way more calls on the calendar that were actually closable. But when you want to make sure that the calls are actually going to be closed, a big thing that's very much needed is having an actual structure. What the structure meant on this specific offering was the protocol that they had. Because the founder, to be honest, was just randomly saying things. He didn't have a script, whatever, didn't really know what he was trying to sell, and he was just having a conversation. Eventually, his closing rate was around 20% as the founder, so absolutely not high enough. What I did there, really made sure that he had a whole system for himself, that he knew what sort of follow-ups to do after they jumped off the call, if they didn't close on the call. But also, we got a framework in there for the closing, so that the people that actually showed up were going to be a lot more on the higher closing rates because the founder actually knew what he was doing sales-wise. But again, the same problem arose. The founder had way too little time to actually focus on the sales. So what we did, we started placing the first trained closer. I pulled one of the closers from my network towards this offer, got him onboarded, etc. He started following the same protocols that we installed earlier. And when he got the hang of it, when he was actually onboarded, the first thing that we did after that was make sure that the founder didn't have to do the whole sales cycle anymore. When that was the case, that one closer was actually going to be on like 40 to 45 hours a week of calls, and that's what that closer wanted. So he was actually happy in the position that the closer was in, because the closer didn't want to leave. He was having like a 30% closing rate. We needed to get that higher, but he was at a 30% closing rate. So the closer didn't want to leave. The founder was actually able to focus on the things that he wanted to focus on, like getting better results for the clients, building out the systems more. When we installed all of that, of course, eventually, when we started running up more marketing, because that's one thing that happens when that founder started focusing on the other tasks at hand, we needed to increase the sales team. With this team, a big thing was that there were a lot of inbound leads as well. So we had 2 setters per closer that we were going to hire, and every single closer setter that joined this offer was placed by us to really make sure that they had the right quality, but also that we knew that they were actually trainable, and we could make sure that they were going to be able to follow the protocols. When we got 2 setter per closer, they started getting more calls in the calendar, and everything was growing quite well. Then the big thing was, of course, that the whole system needs to be optimized in order for us not to see all of the stuff leaking through the cracks. What I mean with the stuff leaking into the cracks, that basically boils down to leads not getting updated in the pipeline, not being followed up with, and just money being thrown out the door, basically. So I think that we did with this specific company, because it was more software based, we wanted to have a custom CRM, or at least that's what the founder wanted. So we built a custom CRM for the founder, basically where everything is 100% designed to how he actually wanted it to be. With other companies, we've installed Close, we've installed Airtable. It just depends on what's actually needed for this company. With them, it was a custom CRM. Everything was automated. Everything was directly changeable just from a form that the closer could fill in at every single end of the call, without having to do all of the work in their CRM. The founder and the sales manager could constantly see the progress as well throughout the day. And that's where we were also able to actually track the whole system. Really make sure that everything was going well. Closes, like I said, were around like 25 to 30% closing rate. Not high enough. So what we wanted to do afterwards was make sure that the sales calls were actually good. When those sales calls were getting better, we were going to constantly keep training with the closers, make sure that they were knowing what they were doing, but also this we could directly rely back to the marketing, because on the call still like 25% wasn't 100% qualified. So we made it sure that that went eventually to 95% qualification rate, just by having a constant loop of feedback from the closers jumping on the calls with the setters, but also with the clients actually seeing what went wrong. And then from on there, we could implement it, get more calls on the calendar, go back to scaling the system. With this particular company, there were 2 closers needed to reach the 100K a month mark. After this, we have constantly kept implementing the same optimizations and the scaling to eventually get the 250K and up. Right now, they're boiling around that 200K a month mark still. And this all just happened in the span of a couple of months. Here it was January 1 in the 100K month mark. That at the beginning, it was only in October. So it was just a couple of months to see that massive increase in cash, but also actually in the systems that help them grow. The founder now is actually happy with where he is at. He can actually take a step back for himself. He can focus on getting the clients very good results, and he can actually make sure there's a future for the system and for the whole company, rather than just being there for a short amount of time and then falling off because they didn't actually have any market value. That's what the founder can now actually focus on, as we are constantly growing that full sales system. And that's something that we're constantly doing with them. If you're interested in also having a conversation about it, seeing whether the system can be implemented well on your company, reach out, we'll book in a meeting, and from there we can really see how we can actually implement it. If it makes sense, perfect, we'll get you started with it and we get all of the systems in place as soon as possible. If not, totally fine, and we can still give you a full structure idea that you can implement yourself. So you will at least see a growth in the amount of sales that you're doing.